In the violent streets of Prohibition-era Chicago, one man ruled with fear, strategy, and unmatched style: Al Capone. Among all his infamous methods of protection and intimidation, one symbol stood above the rest: his heavily armored Cadillac. This was no ordinary car. It was a rolling fortress, a testament to the lengths a crime boss would go to survive in a city where betrayal and bullets were daily threats. Today, we dive deep into the story behind Capone's Cadillac, the engineering marvel, and the strategic genius that kept Scarface alive and in power. The birth of the armored Cadillac. Al Capone had always known that being the most feared gangster in Chicago came with consequences. Assassination attempts were frequent, rival gangs constantly schemed against him, and even law enforcement wanted him behind bars. Early in his reign over Chicago's underworld, Capone realized that mobility and safety had to go hand in hand. In 1928, after multiple assassination attempts, Capone commissioned an armored Cadillac, weighing over 3.5 tons, equipped with bulletproof steel plating and 5-centimeter thick windows. The car was designed not just for travel, but as a mobile fortress capable of withstanding high-powered gunfire. Each Cadillac was customized meticulously, with reinforced tires and armored fuel tanks, ensuring that even the most aggressive attacks could not stop him. But the Cadillac was more than just a defensive tool, it was a symbol. It signaled to everyone in Chicago, from rival gangsters to police officials, that Capone was untouchable. Riding in his Cadillac, Capone projected both power and invincibility. It allowed him to make appearances, attend meetings, and move between Chicago's speakeasies with unmatched confidence, knowing that his life was shielded within a fortress on wheels. The vehicle's creation also reflected Capone's understanding of human psychology. He knew fear was as powerful a weapon as any gun, and the sight of the massive, bulletproof Cadillac alone would intimidate anyone contemplating a threat. The armored car became an extension of Capone's persona: unstoppable, omnipresent, and terrifying. Inside Capone's mobile fortress in the streets of Chicago, Al Capone's Cadillac was not just a vehicle, it was a carefully engineered statement of power, strategy, and survival. The car, fully armored, had been reinforced at every possible weak point. Its body panels were made from thick, heavy-duty steel that could withstand multiple bullets from handguns and even high-powered rifles. The windows, some over 5 centimeters thick, were designed to stop bullets in their tracks, ensuring that Capone and his entourage remained safe even in the midst of a violent ambush. Inside, the Cadillac was as functional as it was intimidating. The seating arrangement allowed Capone to be accompanied by his trusted lieutenants, who could immediately respond to any attack. Hidden compartments were built into the car, storing firearms, ammunition, and sometimes money, reflecting Capone's meticulous planning. Even the exhaust system was modified to prevent attackers from using smoke or fire to trap him, making it nearly impossible to immobilize the vehicle in a hostile situation. The Cadillac's weight alone made it a formidable tool. Weighing over 3.5 tons, it could ram through barricades and rival gang blockades with ease. Capone's drivers were carefully trained to maneuver the massive car through Chicago's narrow streets, alleys, and crowded districts without losing speed or control. Each turn of the wheel was calculated, each route pre-planned, reflecting the precision of a criminal mastermind who saw every city street as a chessboard. The creation of this mobile fortress did not happen in isolation. Capone worked closely with engineers and mechanics who were loyal to him, often paying handsomely to ensure absolute secrecy and quality. There were rumors that he personally oversaw the installation of every bulletproof panel and tested the car's resilience himself, sometimes with live ammunition fired at the vehicle. This was not mere paranoia, it was a harsh reality in Chicago, where rival gangs sought every opportunity to assassinate or intimidate him. Throughout the Prohibition era, Capone's Cadillac became legendary. Rival gangsters spoke of it in hushed tones, both in fear and awe. There were numerous incidents where attacks on Capone were thwarted entirely because of his armored car. In one famous encounter, a group of rival mobsters tried to ambush Capone while he was traveling to a speakeasy meeting. They opened fire with pistols and rifles, but the bullets simply bounced off the reinforced steel. Capone emerged unscathed, stepping out of his Cadillac with the same confidence that had earned him the nickname Scarface. That incident alone cemented the Cadillac's status as an untouchable fortress on wheels. Yet, the Cadillac was more than just protection, it was a tool of psychological warfare. Whenever Capone arrived at a meeting, a party, or even a public appearance, the mere sight of his armored car sent a powerful message. Law enforcement officers, rival gang members, and even political figures understood that Capone was not a man to be trifled with. The Cadillac exuded authority, dominance, and a subtle hint of fear, a visual representation of Capone's control over the city's underworld. The mobility provided by the car also allowed Capone to expand his empire efficiently. He could attend multiple operations in a single day, visit his breweries, speakeasies, and gambling halls without exposing himself to unnecessary risk. His rivals soon realized that no matter how elaborate their plots were, the Cadillac made it almost impossible to catch him off guard. In essence, Capone's mobility became a key part of his strategy, turning a simple luxury into a tactical advantage. The Cadillac also played a crucial role during high-profile confrontations. In one infamous incident, police attempted to intercept Capone while he was being driven to meet a political ally. The armored car, with its reinforced body and strategic design, allowed Capone to evade arrest in a daring escape that would later be recounted in newspapers across Chicago. It was not just a car, it was a symbol of invincibility, a testament to the meticulous planning and strategic mind of one of America's most notorious gangsters. Over time, multiple Cadillac models were modified for Capone. Each one featured unique enhancements based on lessons learned from past attacks. Some had hidden sirens to clear the streets quickly, while others were equipped with reinforced bumpers to ram rival vehicles. The vehicles were carefully maintained, with mechanics working in secrecy to ensure that the cars were always ready for combat situations. Capone's Cadillac also had a profound influence on the culture of organized crime. Rival gang leaders and even law enforcement officials were forced to acknowledge that brute force alone could not defeat someone as well prepared as Capone. The Cadillac represented foresight, strategic thinking, and the importance of protecting one's assets. It inspired other mob bosses to invest in similar armored vehicles, forever changing the way gangsters navigated the dangerous streets of major American cities. In the end, the Cadillac was more than just steel and glass. It was a mobile emblem of Capone's authority, a rolling fortress that allowed him to survive decades of violence, betrayal, and law enforcement scrutiny. Every panel, every reinforced window, and every modification told a story of survival in a city where danger lurked around every corner. Capone's Cadillac was not merely a vehicle, it was a legacy, a symbol of the ingenuity, ruthlessness, and sheer audacity of one of history's most infamous gangsters. Capone's Cadillac, the ultimate weapon on Chicago streets. Al Capone's Cadillac was not just a car, it was a mobile empire, a moving fortress, and the ultimate expression of the gangster's dominance over Chicago. By the mid-1920s, Capone had transformed from a street-level thug into a strategic mastermind, and the Cadillac became one of his most essential tools in consolidating power. Every inch of this car was meticulously engineered, not for comfort, but for survival, intimidation, and the efficient execution of his criminal enterprise. The Cadillac's armored body panels were made of steel so thick that even the most powerful handguns and rifles used by rival gangsters could not penetrate them. Windows, measuring up to 5 centimeters in thickness, were specially treated to stop bullets cold. The reinforced tires and heavy-duty suspension meant that the car could crush smaller vehicles, climb curbs, and ram through barricades set up by rivals or police. Capone had realized early that mobility and protection were equally important in a city where every street corner could become a battlefield. Inside the Cadillac, Capone's inner circle was just as protected as he was. Trusted lieutenants were seated strategically, always ready to respond in case of an ambush. Hidden compartments stored firearms, extra ammunition, cash, and even important documents. Every detail had been designed with one goal in mind: ensure that Capone emerged unscathed from any threat. Reports from Chicago newspapers of the time described the Cadillac as invincible and a rolling fortress, a machine that even the bravest or most desperate gangsters hesitated to confront. The Cadillac was also a psychological weapon. When Capone arrived at a speakeasy, a meeting, or even a public event, the sight of the massive, gleaming armored vehicle sent a wave of fear through rivals and law enforcement alike. Witnesses often recalled how onlookers would step back, and even rival gang leaders would hesitate before attempting any move against him. The Cadillac alone became synonymous with Capone's dominance. It was clear that confronting him required careful planning and resources. One of the most famous uses of the Cadillac was during the height of gang wars in Chicago. In 1927, Capone received intelligence about a planned ambush set by a rival faction attempting to seize control of one of his breweries. Forewarned, Capone loaded his Cadillac with his top lieutenants and drove directly into the trap. Bullets rained down on the armored car, ricocheting off the reinforced steel. The driver executed precise maneuvers, driving through narrow alleys and crowded streets, evading traps and barricades set by the enemy. By the time the Cadillac emerged from the ambush, not a single person inside was harmed. This event cemented the legend of Capone's Cadillac and demonstrated his strategic genius. The Cadillac's presence also forced law enforcement to change tactics. Police officers who had previously tried to intercept Capone's car realized that brute force alone was insufficient. Barricades, patrols, and roadblocks were often circumvented by Capone's drivers, trained specifically for urban warfare. The car's ability to carry multiple armed companions and weapons meant that any attempt at arrest could quickly turn deadly for officers, creating a climate of fear and caution around him. In addition to evading attacks, Capone's Cadillac played a central role in his day-to-day operations. The Prohibition era demanded constant movement between breweries, speakeasies, and gambling dens. The Cadillac allowed Capone to maintain control over his empire while minimizing exposure to threats. Each journey was carefully planned, with scouts and drivers familiar with escape routes, choke points, and safe houses throughout the city. Even in emergencies, Capone's Cadillac was equipped to withstand sudden gunfire, collisions, and attempts at sabotage. The car's influence extended beyond Capone himself. Rival gang leaders began commissioning similar armored vehicles, creating an arms race on wheels in Chicago's underworld. Stories circulated about armored Cadillac convoys, moving through the city, each carrying gangsters ready to respond to violence at a moment's notice. Newspapers of the era reported these vehicles as symbols of both wealth and terror, highlighting how Capone's innovations set the standard for gangster mobility and security. There were also numerous lesser-known incidents that reinforced the Cadillac's mystique. During one event, Capone's car was fired upon from multiple sides while leaving a downtown meeting. Eyewitnesses described bullets bouncing off the steel like raindrops, while the massive tires crushed smaller vehicles that tried to block his path. Such incidents weren't just about survival, they sent a clear message: Capone was untouchable, and Chicago's streets belonged to him. Capone's Cadillac even served as a strategic tool in political and financial manipulation. He could appear at events with such calculated timing and presence that city officials, police officers, and even competing businessmen were subtly reminded of his influence. The armored vehicle wasn't merely protection, it was an extension of Capone's power, amplifying his aura of authority in a city defined by fear and respect. Over the years, Capone commissioned multiple variations of the Cadillac. Each new model incorporated lessons learned from previous attacks. Reinforced fuel tanks, upgraded suspensions, hidden weapon compartments, and even communication tools were installed. Mechanics worked under strict secrecy, often at night, to ensure the cars were always in peak condition. The Cadillac was more than transportation, it was a mobile command center, capable of supporting Capone's operations in real time and surviving the most extreme conditions. Even as the Prohibition era drew to a close, and law enforcement intensified its efforts against organized crime, Capone's Cadillac remained a symbol of his dominance. Rival gangsters who had once plotted against him now understood that direct confrontation was futile. The Cadillac had become a legend, a manifestation of Capone's genius in blending brute force, engineering, and psychological intimidation. In retrospect, Capone's Cadillac symbolizes more than just the gangster's survival instincts. It represents the combination of foresight, strategy, and audacity that made Al Capone one of the most infamous figures in American history. Each armored panel, each reinforced window, each hidden compartment tells a story of a man who anticipated danger at every turn and built a machine capable of matching his ambition. In the dangerous streets of 1920s Chicago, the Cadillac wasn't just a car, it was a statement, a warning, and a fortress all rolled into one. Capone's Cadillac: dominance, fear, and urban warfare. By the late 1920s, Al Capone's Cadillac had become more than just a car, it was a symbol of his unchallenged authority over Chicago's underworld. Every detail of the Cadillac, from its reinforced steel panels to its armored tires, was designed not just for protection, but for psychological dominance. Rivals, law enforcement, and even casual witnesses instantly recognized the ominous presence of this mobile fortress. The Cadillac played a critical role in Capone's strategic planning. Unlike ordinary gangsters, Capone treated mobility as a tactical advantage. Every trip through Chicago was mapped in advance. Escape routes, choke points, and ambush-prone intersections were studied meticulously. Drivers were trained to respond instantly to threats, often rehearsing evasive maneuvers that could turn narrow alleyways into lifelines. This level of preparation allowed Capone to attend high-stakes meetings, visit breweries, and oversee operations without ever putting himself at unnecessary risk. One of the most dramatic uses of the Cadillac occurred during a rival gang ambush in the North Side. Intelligence had revealed that a coalition of enemies intended to attack Capone while he visited a speakeasy late at night. Anticipating the strike, Capone loaded his Cadillac with his most loyal enforcers. The streets were alive with tension as the Cadillac glided through dark alleys and poorly lit avenues, bullets ricocheting off the armored panels. The car's reinforced tires smashed through obstacles and even smaller vehicles that attempted to block the path, allowing Capone and his crew to escape unharmed. The event was widely reported in newspapers, spreading fear among his rivals and solidifying the Cadillac's legendary status. Capone's Cadillac also acted as a tool of intimidation during meetings and public appearances. Rival gang leaders knew that crossing paths with the armored car could be fatal. Capone would arrive at a meeting not just as a mob boss, but as a figure of omnipresent power. The vehicle's sheer size, the glint of its steel body, and the sight of armed men inside conveyed a silent but unmistakable message: challenging Capone was not an option. His Cadillac transformed everyday movements into calculated statements of fear and authority. Law enforcement faced significant challenges in dealing with Capone's mobility. Traditional police tactics were ineffective. Barricades, roadblocks, and pursuit vehicles could not match the Cadillac's armored resilience. Officers quickly learned that confronting Capone required careful coordination, specialized units, and sometimes sheer luck. The armored car essentially created a moving fortress that allowed Capone to evade multiple attempts at arrest while continuing to expand his criminal empire. The Cadillac also influenced the way rival gangs operated. Envious of Capone's technological advantage, many gangs began commissioning their own armored vehicles, sparking an urban arms race. Convoys of armored cars became a familiar sight in Chicago, each transporting gangsters ready to respond with deadly precision. The Cadillac was not just a means of survival, it set a standard for how gangsters approached security, mobility, and intimidation during the Prohibition era. Beyond gang warfare, Capone's Cadillac had practical uses for his criminal empire. The Prohibition-era liquor trade required rapid transport between breweries, speakeasies, and distribution points. The armored vehicle allowed Capone to oversee operations in real time while ensuring the safety of cash, alcohol, and personnel. Hidden compartments stored weapons, cash, and sensitive documents, allowing Capone to maintain control over his empire even when traveling through dangerous neighborhoods. Even the media could not ignore the Cadillac. Photographs and newspaper accounts highlighted its imposing presence, describing it as a moving fortress and a vehicle no man dares challenge. These reports added to Capone's mystique, reinforcing the perception that he was untouchable. Each sighting of the Cadillac created an aura of fear and respect, ensuring that both allies and enemies understood the scope of his influence. As time went on, Capone continued to innovate. Each new model of the Cadillac incorporated lessons from previous confrontations, reinforced fuel tanks to prevent explosions, upgraded suspensions for rough terrain, and even enhanced communication tools for coordinating with his crew. The car became not just a symbol of power, but a practical instrument of survival, intelligence, and strategy. In summary, Capone's Cadillac was far more than transportation, it was a statement, a weapon, and a fortress. It allowed him to navigate the deadly streets of Chicago, project authority, and maintain control over a vast criminal empire. The combination of engineering genius, tactical foresight, and psychological intimidation made the Cadillac a crucial element of Al Capone's reign, leaving a legacy that would be remembered for generations as the ultimate gangster vehicle. Capone's Cadillac, the final chapter of fear and legacy. As Al Capone's influence over Chicago grew, the Cadillac became the ultimate symbol of his power, a mobile fortress that struck fear into anyone daring to challenge him. By the early 1930s, law enforcement, rival gangs, and even ordinary citizens knew that Capone's arrival in his armored car meant business, danger, and the unmistakable presence of organized crime at its peak. Yet, despite its fearsome reputation, the Cadillac was far more than just a vehicle, it was an extension of Capone himself, reflecting his strategy, ambition, and meticulous planning. One of the most defining moments for Capone's Cadillac came during the aftermath of the notorious gang conflicts that had plagued Chicago. Rival gangs constantly plotted attacks, aiming to ambush Capone or disrupt his criminal empire. Yet, with the Cadillac, Capone navigated these threats with unparalleled precision. Ambushes that would have spelled doom for lesser gangsters were easily avoided. Bullets bounced off armored panels, and roadblocks were no match for its reinforced tires. Capone's loyal chauffeurs and enforcers coordinated perfectly with him, turning every drive into a calculated operation where every alley, bridge, and side street was accounted for in advance. The Cadillac also played a crucial role in Capone's public relations as a mob boss. Arriving at speakeasies, breweries, or gang summits in the massive armored car, Capone projected not only physical power but psychological dominance. The presence of the vehicle and the heavily armed men inside created an aura that discouraged confrontation. Even the most ambitious rivals thought twice before making a move. The Cadillac was a rolling warning that Capone could be everywhere at once, untouchable and ever prepared. Inside the vehicle, the organization of Capone's crew reflected his genius for detail. The Cadillac wasn't merely a transport, it was a command center. Hidden compartments stored weapons, money, and sensitive documents. Communication lines allowed Capone to coordinate with other gang units across Chicago, making sure operations ran smoothly even while on the move. This level of foresight ensured that no matter what threat arose, Capone could respond instantly, turning potential disasters into strategic victories. Law enforcement found themselves at a disadvantage time and again. Traditional policing methods, roadblocks, patrol cars, and ambushes were ineffective against a moving fortress designed for survival. Even the FBI, then in its early years, struggled to predict Capone's movements. The Cadillac, in essence, rewrote the rules of engagement in Chicago's streets, forcing both criminal rivals and law enforcement officers to adapt or face disastrous consequences. The Cadillac's legend wasn't confined to the streets of Chicago. Newspapers, photographs, and eyewitness accounts of the armored vehicle spread nationwide, embedding Capone's image as a ruthless, untouchable criminal mastermind into American culture. Headlines described it as a rolling fortress, a gangster's tank, and Chicago's nightmare on wheels. Each sighting of the Cadillac reinforced Capone's dominance and instilled fear even among those who had never met him. However, the Cadillac was more than just intimidation, it was a tactical tool in the expansion of Capone's empire. The Prohibition era demanded speed, secrecy, and mobility. The transport of liquor, cash, and personnel across the city required precision planning. The armored car allowed Capone to oversee operations firsthand, ensuring his profits flowed smoothly and rival interference was minimized. It turned logistics into an art form, with Capone's empire running like a machine fueled by both fear and efficiency. Over time, the Cadillac evolved. Capone commissioned upgrades with lessons learned from previous confrontations: thicker steel panels, reinforced fuel tanks, advanced suspension for uneven city streets, and improved communication systems. The vehicle adapted with him, reflecting his ongoing strategy of anticipating threats before they arose. Every modification was a testament to Capone's focus on survival and dominance, cementing the Cadillac's status as an essential part of his criminal operations. The final years of Capone's reign saw the Cadillac continue its role as a guardian and symbol. Even as law enforcement intensified their efforts to bring him down, the armored vehicle allowed Capone to maintain a level of mobility and security unmatched by any contemporary gangster. While arrests, raids, and investigations loomed, Capone's Cadillac remained a constant reminder that he controlled not just territory, but the very perception of power in Chicago. Ultimately, Capone's Cadillac stands in history as more than just a car, it is a symbol of ingenuity, dominance, and fear. It represents the intersection of criminal strategy, psychological warfare, and urban survival. Through its armored steel and careful planning, it enabled one of America's most infamous gangsters to evade threats, consolidate power, and cement his legacy. The vehicle's story continues to fascinate historians, car enthusiasts, and true crime fans alike, immortalizing Capone's name as a figure who transformed mobility into an art form and fear into authority. In the end, the Cadillac was not just a tool, it was Capone's declaration to the world: power is mobility, fear is influence, and survival belongs to those who prepare relentlessly.